Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Every week, we bring you the stories of people who are making the world better locally, globally, and digitally. We are excited to be able to have a talk today that takes a bit of a different angle in terms of the presentations that we normally record. Today, we have with us a comedian, Cathy Zhao. And Cathy is somebody I met at a New Year's celebration that we'd had as part of the Friendship Association. And we got to talking, and I said, "Oh, I've got this group," and she got to telling me about some work she's doing with Laugh It Out Hub, and I thought we need to get you on. So we're excited for her to be part of this. She is the co-founder of Laugh It Out Hub. She's a stand-up comedian and a sit-down entrepreneur based in San Francisco. And if you want to read the full bio, just find it on the page accompanying the video or podcast. Our podcast series is one that you can enjoy on long commutes repeatedly. If you need to binge, that's actually a perfectly good way to do it. But we are excited to have that opportunity to share stories that inspire others. And I am sure, Cathy, that we're going to get one of those today. So thank you for being with us. I hand the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Rushton. Hi, everyone. This is Cathy Zhao. How are you doing today? Normally, I would just say, you think I really care. That's kind of my opening line for my comedy. But today, I'm so excited, to give you a presentation about our Laugh It Hub, on behalf of our hub. And as Rushton mentioned, I live in San Francisco, and I think everybody knows living in San Francisco, you are either working in a technology company or homeless. For people who are doing nonprofits, I feel like we're kind of the people working in between. So today, I just will have a short brief of what we are doing with Love It Hub and how we can help you and how you can help us. So let's go. So Love It Out Hub, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that we want to use comedy workshops and improvisation workshops, as well as performances, to help the mental health of teenagers as well as adults. So we believe everyone needs to figure out a way to vent out, especially during this world's high stressful situations. And we think comedy is the best way to deal with it. And that's what we have been doing for 2.5 years. So currently, our focus is on teenagers, especially the underprivileged teenagers, their mental health. Why teenagers? So as we know, like we went through the pandemic and from the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Data Summary and Trends Report, during 2011 and 2021, it highlights like the concerning trends about the mental health of US high school students. In 2021, more than 4 in 10, that's basically 42% students, felt persistently sad or hopelessly, and nearly 1/3, about like I think 29% of them experienced poor mental health. So I think mental health is not just a number. It's like on everyone, we kind of nor and then sometimes experience some lows and downs. And especially for this generation of teenagers. So we read the book, The Anxious Generation, written by a professor of psychology teaching at NYU, Jonathan Haidt. He mentioned that if we look at the timeline from 2024 to 2020, that's like kind of like the beginning of the pandemic, the mental health, especially major depression among teens, for girls, there's this increase of 145% up since 2010. And for boys, it's 161% increase. So now people, a lot of people, also educators, began to us like how we can help this anxious generation, that how can we help the teenagers, that's kind of like to help our future. So then like my friend and I, who is also my best friend from Stanford, we decided to do something different, not just give some classes, but also to give some fun. So it's very interesting. Just I want to tell the story how we started it, because we started to bring some ideas at the beginning of the pandemic. At that time, I was a volunteer for a YMCA mentorship program. So I had this mentee who was 11 years old at the time, as an African American girl who lived with her mom in East Palo Alto. And for a while, they couldn't even afford the rent in East Palo Alto. So they lived in their tiny car. And then when the pandemic hit everyone, we couldn't see each other like we did before every week. And I was asking her if anything I could help her. So she told me her classmates, a lot of them, they could afford the online extracurriculum activities, but her mom couldn't afford it. So she felt a little bit depressed because she couldn't, meet in person with her friends or basically anyone else during the quarantine. Then I talked with my best friend Bethany. It's like, is there anything we could help? Bethany, who is a senior engineering manager at Google, told me, Cathy, how about we teach them programming? I was like, stop. Like, I hate programming. Okay, can we just stop talking about engineering stuff? So then we decided to think of something more fun, because I am a stand-up comedian. I do comedy almost every night. So I was like, how about we teach them how to tell jokes to help them find a way to vent out. And then we started, to talk with a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists, professors at Stanford, Berkeley, Columbia University, Harvard University, and they all like our ideas, that they give us a lot of data and also previous research on the mental health and humor. Also, we talk with a lot of parents that they all embrace this idea. So we think like, okay, let's start a nonprofit organization and see what we can help to those teenagers. And besides that, one thing I think really helped me to start this organization is the book. One of the books I read is called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I think probably many of you have read this book. For the people who never heard about the book, this is a book written by a very famous psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust. In this book, it's a very, very, very thin book. It's not a long book. He talked about why some people could survive the Holocaust while others couldn't. In one chapter, he mentioned the power of humor, that how you need a way, like a getaway, to escape the current horrible situation. So Victor mentioned in this book that there was one time he had to go outside to labor at I think the Auschwitz concentration camp, but his shoes were stolen, and it was like a cold winter morning. So he was so anxious, so nervous, like, how could I work without my shoes in the snow? At this moment, he was kind of joking to himself, like, oh, I need to think 20 years when I'm teaching, in the US, in a college, I probably take it as a joke, that's talking to my students about how I survived that morning without my shoes. So that's how he used humor as a gateway to help him survive in that situation. And also, the research on humor and mental health actually started way long time ago. I think probably from in the 1920s, 1930s. And there are many books and research to support the importance of humor with our mental health. For example, there's this book called Surviving Mental Illness Through Humor. And there's also a quite popular one, which was published recently by a professor from Stanford, Jennifer Archer, that is called Humor Seriously. So I feel like people began to accept the ideas like we need more humor in our life for ourselves. So one thing I want to talk about is how our Laugh at a Hub could help. So currently, we provide comedy workshops and comedy shows for our communities, schools, and organizations. So for workshops, we work with different schools. Actually, we go into the schools to provide the students as well as the teachers stand-up comedy workshops from 1 week all the way to 12 weeks to help the teenagers find a way to vent out. And for comedy shows, we have done more than, I think, 10 shows with technology companies, local communities, nonprofit organizations, because we all know, laughter is the best medicine. And currently, we have worked with, I think, 15 organizations, schools, and technology companies, because we are in the San Francisco Bay Area. Most of the companies are technology companies, right? And we started our program. The first workshop is with Stanford School of Medicine. It's a program called Medicine and the Muse. So we provide a 1.5 hour workshop to some students in this program, as well as some professors. And from then on, we started to work with Boys and Girls Club of Peninsula, like in the Bay Area in Rose City. And the East Bay Innovation Academy, we have this 12-week comedy workshops with their middle school. And we are also working with their high school right now. Then the 826 Valencia, Presidio North Schools, Palo Alto High, Oasis for Girls, Ohlone Elementary, and Be the One is the American Legion for the mental health of veterans, which we did a comedy show for them, as well as Lumentum, a public technology company based in San Jose that we brought in a group of comedians to bring them laughters. So if any one of you need laughter or want to work with us with the comedy workshops, feel free to reach out to me. So currently, I feel like our key differentiators is we connect humor, comedy workshops with the support, not only from our comedians, the schools, but actually a lot of psychology researchers and therapists, which we have, I think, the great support from different communities and different academic groups. And another thing that we started from last year was support group. We call it CC group. It's like too different from the AA support group. We want to use comedy and compliments together, to support the mental health of teenagers as well as adults. It's not just from our comedy facilitators, but also just from each one in this group. So we call it peer sponsorship. And these are some pictures of the comedy shows and workshops. We have worked with different schools and communities. And at the end of my presentation, I would say that I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you today. And we need your help. So for donations or just want to be a volunteer, please reach out to laughitahub@gmail.com or just message me. And we also need your help to spread the word, because this year we are going to bring our comedy workshops to the schools in Los Angeles and New York City. If you feel like in your community, in your city, you also want to have our workshops, please, contact us. And also, if you are on any social media, you can follow us at Lafayette Hub, on Instagram. So that's all what I want to share with you today. Thank you so much. And if there's anything I could let you know at the end is don't forget to laugh. Thank you.
Wonderful, Cathy. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and stop sharing for the moment. We'll move into just our question time. First of all, my name is Rushton Hurley. I'm with the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley as its programs chair. I was the charter president in 2015-16. Also with us is in Houston, Rory Olson. Rory, always good to see you, my friend. So I'm going to start the questions. You mentioned Viktor Frankl, all right, and the man's search for meaning. There's an interesting element of his story that essentially says that one of the things that helped him get through his experience was the power of caring for another person. So for you, is there something about that intersection of comedy and service that has excited you about who you can be personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think that's very true that the service is very important, to keep me working on this nonprofit. Because there was one time last year, I was working in China and I had to take care of the nonprofit as well as also have a full-time job. So it was also I was doing a lot of comedy, so it was really tough for me. And I need to do everything because none of us in this organization is full-time. So all of us just volunteer. We have very limited human resources. So I have to do all the, receipt in finance. I was asking myself, why am I doing this? I don't get a salary from it. And I feel like, why am I doing this? But then I realized that a lot of kids in our program, at that moment, we were working with 826 Valencia. There were kids, they took the bus for an hour to come into the 826 Valencia, the office, just want to join our program. And their parents came at the last class and thanked us, thanked our facilitators. I was like, oh my gosh, even though there's no money involved, I feel so good because I'm helping people. And those people are really committed to what they are learning. So I feel that this sense of service really, keep me working on our program.
Speaking of that kind of service, you told a story about an East Palo Alto student that you mentored, and she was in many ways the spark that started Laugh It Out Hub, right?
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us a little bit more about her? Like what has happened to her since? Did she try doing comedy as a part of any of these programs?
Yeah, because very interesting. Because in that program, it's called YMCA mentorship program, and especially you will match volunteers with different kids. And my mentee, Jamaya, she at the first beginning said, "I want someone who's goofy," and then the program director said, "Yeah, we have stand-up comedian here." So that's how we become, a mentor and mentee. And I felt that I learned a lot from her, to be honest. Because every week we have different activities, like 1 to 3 hours together. Because I lived in Palo Alto, she lived in East Palo Alto. So basically, I will just pick her up from her place and we'll, visit the Stanford campus, visit some like friends who like to talk with teenagers, as well as we went hiking, we went to see the movies together. And I think one thing I learned is that you need to be generous with people, because at the moment I was like, I never gave money to any homeless person. But Jamaya, every time she's like, oh, I only have $10, but I like to give $1 to this person, on the street. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad because, I have a full-time job. I have my own house, my own car. But Jamaya, she's living in the tiny car with her mom. And she still wants to do more. So I feel so guilty. And it's from that moment, I feel like I want to do more. I want to be more generous, either like, to donating more money to the people who are in need or do more for the people who are really in need, like Jamaya. So that's somehow, like I decided to start a nonprofit by my own.
Very cool. Rory, I know you've got something to add to the discussion.
Yeah, strangely enough, this time next week, I will be at my 50th law school class reunion in Durham, North Carolina. So I'm reviewing things that happened because, people are going to swap war stories and all that.
Mm.
And I remembered something that happened my first year, which is sort of a reflection. One of the things I'm doing on the side is I'm writing not all my memoirs, but a few interesting things. When I was a first year law student at Duke, they split the class up into manageable groups. And my lucky class, my team and the other team, we got to be the first to do a moot court argument. Okay. So the problem was historically, for a long, long time in the US, if you went to a charitable institution for medical care and the doctor screwed up, you couldn't sue the hospital because that was just the law. Well, the law started to change, so we're dealing with whether it could or not. And I thought I was pretty well prepared. So the other side said, no, they're wrong because of blah, blah, blah. And I realized, oh my God, I don't have a thing to say. So when our professor who was acting as the judge said, and Mr. Olson, what do you have to say? I thought, and I remember to get one of the ways you could get to the moot courtroom, which was on the second floor, is you went up the stairs. And Rushton, you're probably old enough to remember the Park Davis paintings of great moments in medicine. Remember those? Yeah, okay, you won't admit you're that old. Well, somebody else did something comparable, and they had those on the paintings of our on the wall going up to the courtroom. And I remembered there was a painting of St. Paul, which came straight out of the Acts of the Apostles, when he was accused of committing some crime against Roman law. And he said, I'm a Roman, which meant he had to be tried in Rome. It didn't do any good, but he did it. So I listened and I thought, and I went, Judge, we all know that in our history, there have been things that we've had to deal with, even if it wasn't the best of deals. So I re-mentioned what happened. St. Paul, the Acts of the Apostles, he looked at the judge and said, Civis Romanus sum, which means I'm a Roman citizen, and therefore he would be entitled to be tried in Rome. And I said, and he was transported at the empire's expense to be tried in Rome. Certainly, Your Honor, if the Romans could do that, can't our jurisdiction at least be as outgoing to the rights of the accused as the decadent Roman Empire? And I stopped. And then I heard the whole courtroom laughing. And when we got done, our professor said, and I knew this, his father had been on the Supreme Court. So he'd been one of the law clerks for the Supreme Court. So he had heard many, many arguments by, fine lawyers at the US Supreme Court. He said, in all my years as a lawyer and a law clerk, I have never seen a better use of humor than that did. So that was the end of it. And everybody patted me on the back and all that. And the word just came out. You got to watch Olson. He's got a really great sense of humor. I've got more, but that's the one I remember. So it just sort of tied into having a professional comedian speaking. And I'm thinking about me ad-libbing. And that was a really great ad-lib.
But without a doubt, the power of humor is something important for all of us as we think about how how we're going to deal with our circumstances. And you know, Roy's also telling a story about his own background. Cathy, as I think about your background as someone who came here from China, are there elements of your experience that made it easier to become someone thinking about possibilities with comedy, or even in this kind of service that you do?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not a funny person. I cannot do comedy." I was like, "No, no, no. I believe there's this humor inside of everyone. You need to take it out." Because I think many people ask me, "Why did you start comedy in the US?" I was like, "Because life sucks." Because especially as an immigrant, I was struggling with my English. You know, at one time, I really wanted to go back to China because my English really sucked, and my mom told me, like, speak your own damn English, let Americans suffer. So I was like, okay, at least not me suffer. So that's why I kept living here. And so I believe we every day we have a lot of things that we couldn't solve. You know, either like in our mind, or just we say something we feel unfair. So I feel like comedy is a very good way to transcend from our current suffering. So that's why I believe that if you are suffering from life right now, gosh, you're gonna be a great comedian. You're gonna have a lot of material.
That sounds like a very healthy way of thinking about your circumstances. In terms of health, you know, the power of humor to help people who are working their way through depression, thing like this, you know, is such a central piece to you know why you and your room. What was it? Was it just a friend or a roommate at Stanford? Bethany, I think you mentioned.
Like she's my neighbor, but she's also a good friend.
Got it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they always like she and her roommate always give me my favorite food, uh, aka free food.
Nice. That's the right price point for sure. Is there something about um, the kinds of challenges that people face, and then you know you had the chart there that showed the progression of incidences of depression among teens, and it kind of is mostly level till about 2012, and then it goes pretty much straight up through 2020. And typically, I mean, people will point to, you know, that was the tipping point at which most young people in these communities owned a smartphone.
Yes.
Is social media too easy an explanation for depression and the kinds of challenges, or is it legitimately front and center with regard to the problems that kids are facing?
Yeah, I think there are many theories. Like, I think one theory a lot of people believe, as well as the author of this Anxious Generation, the book, he believes is social media and a smartphone. Because I remember there was a chart comparing the mental health problem before, I think, 2000, before 2000 and after 2000. That was kind of the era the smartphone came to everyone. And that's also very interesting. He talked about the internet, because we say, oh, if they use that smartphone, how about the internet? Because when the internet came to us, I think probably from 19, I would say 1998, 7, I don't remember it clearly, but there's one period, I think probably till 2010, that time, actually, the increase in mental health problems was not that high. So which means like the Gen Z and the millennial, there's a huge gap in
Hmm.
mental health problems. So because I'm a millennial, I would say I don't think internet make me uh so, just engaged with other people online. Even though I feel you use email, you search online, but I feel smartphone, especially social media, definitely, distract me a lot. Even as an adult, I have to say, it distract me almost every day because it's so easy. You carry it everywhere. So I think I kind of lean to that theory that the smartphone and the social media. But I know there are like many theories about how this generation mental health has become such a big problem.
All right. Well, certainly the challenges of social media are also balanced for someone who's a comedian by the opportunities of getting your story out.
Yeah.
And so do you find that using social media is a particularly powerful way to, to find opportunities as a comedian?
I think in general, like you need to have a lot of followers. So like a lot of big comedy clubs would like to invite you. But unfortunately, I don't have a great, pool of followers. But I still get a lot of comedy shows because, locally and also nationally, once you perform very well, like people will spread the word. It's like other comics would like to watch for you, and that's the usual way. But the new way is like you need more followers. So feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's Cathy with letter C, Cathy the bitch. Uh, so easy to remember. I feel very anxious when I was working with social media stuff. On one hand, I know I need to have more followers, but on the other hand, I really didn't want to spend so much time every day on it. So it's very struggling. But I think like eventually I probably will have a better way to deal with it, to probably post more interesting and educational clips online. For example, like when we have a video of this clip, like I'm going to put some, on my social media so people can learn something as well as, feel it's fun at the same time.
Well, excellent. Hopefully they'll check out Rotary.cool as a result of learning about us. Last question for you. When we think about the being in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, what kind of special challenges or opportunities are there for a startup person or a comedian or both?
I think like in terms of being a comedian in the Bay Area, I feel like San Francisco is definitely more like a hub for technology people. And by seeing that, like technology people, a lot of nerds don't like come out at night, go to a comedy club or bars to listen to comedy. So I think they are probably programming or whatever, trying to start a startup. So like in terms of that, it's very hard to have a huge crowd because I perform all over the country. Like last week I was in Atlanta, and then before that I was in Las Vegas. There are a lot of tourists and the local people. They really like to support comedy. But in San Francisco, I think things might be a little bit different. Even though like 30 years ago, before the tech boom, there's the Robin Williams, there's this whole generation of San Francisco, the best comedians. But I think gone are the good days. So, I mean, if you wanna like make a name for yourself in comedy, probably New York City, Los Angeles are the best place for you. But I do think there are some other interesting things happening in the Bay Area. It's like we can also combine comedy and technology. This is something I'm going to do. Probably will post on my social media. It's like I'm gonna invite some tech people talk about actually complain about their work and with comedy stuff. So yeah, stay tuned. I think that's something could be fun.
Well, I love that you found so many different ways to use comedy for good. That's something very, very impressive. I'm going to wind things down, and I'll hand it back to you in a moment for the final word. For all of you who've joined us, thank you so much for taking time to hear the stories that we get to share as part of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Whether you're catching this as a recorded video or as part of our podcast series, we love that you take time to share your time with us and to hopefully be inspired by the things that you hear. If you are on our SiliconValleyRotary.com page, please leave a comment at the bottom in our Discuss, DISQUS section. That's one of the places where we get a chance to interact as part of an online and asynchronous social and service club. With that, I will do what we always do, which is hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Cathy, what would you like folks to have clearly in mind as they finish watching the recording or listening to the podcast?
I think laughter is the best medicine. And please join our Lafayette Hub, like to help your mental health and help your communities. Thank you.
Wonderful. You can find these links on our pages, and we hope you will follow them and learn more. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week.